and a fresh young girl. She knows how to dress so nicely and is cunning too. She can give shelter to all devotees and is very grave. She is always so brightly smiling, and her eyes always move. She is always so merciful and always gives respect. She can speak nicely and sweetly and sings so expertly. She is modest and she is gentle and always patient. She is enjoyed only by Krishna and is always very shy. She has all auspicious marks on her transcendental form. She can excite Lord Sri Krishna by her sweet fragrance. She is the abode of love of the people of Gokul. She is always affectionate to the elders and the young. She is always on the highest stage of devotion to the Lord. She is obliged by the dealings of her associates. She is the greatest among Krishna's girlfriends. She always keeps Krishna under her control. Jai Sri Radhe.
Jai
So
Shri.
it's going to sound better than that when we finish. So I started yesterday afternoon.
Beautiful.
And I had a class at 4:30 this morning, went to bed at midnight, so I had to take a little rest. And I was just working on it before. That's coming out quite nicely.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's beautiful. Thank you so
I'm not used to producing a song in a few hours like this, but anyway. So, Hare Krishna.
Shall we go ahead and start?
Yeah, please.
Yes, thank you. Adityan Prabhu, would you want to please say some wonderful words about Mahatma Prabhu? Welcome, and then I can say a few words about the devotee care.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And this is our session 2 of our Wholesome Devotee Care. So our first session was by His Grace Madhavananda Prabhu, and today we are very fortunate to welcome His Grace Mahatma Prabhu, who's going to be talking on japa, how japa is actually an aspect of our self-care. And briefly about His Grace Mahatma Prabhu, is a very, very senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he joined in 1969. And since then, he's involved with so many preaching projects like book distribution. He served as Sankirtan leader for many years, temple president, and congregational development, various educational products. So Prabhu has contributed and involved with so many different departments of serving Srila Prabhupada's mission. And of the I would say Prabhuji is also involved in giving different seminars, like particularly my favorites. Prabhu has so many seminars, as the one on japa for sure, then there's one on forgiveness, there's one on humility, and one on how to keep vows. So those 4 are like my highlights, but that's beautiful seminar. So at the end of the session, we'll also give links where you can actually hear these seminars. And Prabhuji is expert in actually presenting Krishna consciousness in a way that will actually address our everyday challenges, making our spiritual practice like very practical and making it a part of our life. And I personally have known Prabhuji for many years, and it's my great fortune to know Prabhu. And Prabhu also is so expert at kirtans and nice compositions, like the one here on Srimati Radharani. He also has one on Brahma Samhita, which I've been hearing for like years and years, which is like so beautiful. So we are very, very fortunate to have His Grace Mahatma Prabhu, and we would like to very warmly welcome Prabhuji. Thank you so much for joining us. His Great Mahatma Prabhu ki jai.
Yeah.
Also, I would like to welcome, we have other yatras here. So this is organized by ISKCON New Goloka, but we also have ISKCON Richmond. We have Divyanam Prabhu from there. We have ISKCON Orlando joining us, and ISKCON Bergen County joining us. So we have few other yatras who are joining us for the session. So we are very grateful for all the other yatras for joining us and being a part of this entire series. So again, thank you all so much for joining. And Ujjwala Rasagya Mati, she'll have few words, and then we'll hear His Grace Mahatma Prabhu.
Right,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditya Prabhu. And yeah, my pranams to all the devotees there. And Mahatma Prabhuji, really grateful for accepting to be with us here and speak
Hare
regarding japa. Yes, thank you for accepting the invitation. Prabhuji, I was just going to say a few words about this devotee care initiative.
Okay.
And then there were like few slides, 4 or 5 slides, which show, what the Shastra and Acharyas are saying about japa. And I thought it would be wonderful for you to continue and take over from there. So regarding this Wholesome Devotee Care initiative, for those who are new to this series and are joining now, just want to let you know about the relevance of this initiative to all of us, the sadhakas. In general, for pure devotees and acharyas, they didn't need any initiatives like this. Their spiritual fountainhead was just open from within, and every aspect of their health, the physical health was taken care of. They were very regulated in their daily routine or prasadam or parikrama, morning walks, everything. And their emotional health, this part, emotional health, was no different from their spiritual health anyway. For them, all their emotions were spiritualized. And in the cognitive health, learning and sharing, all they knew was Shastra, and all they were doing is sharing, prachar, preaching. Social health, and regarding the devotee interactions and Vaishnava care, those pure devotees did not really see any difference between the deity service and devotee service. That pure they are. And they were and they are. So for them, the spiritual health was the fountainhead, and every aspect of the other aspects of the health were automatically taken care of. So for us, if only we can have explicit faith in the words and instructions of the pure devotees and in the Shastra, and serve the holy name with our whole being, then we would be having access to that mercy also from the acharyas and the holy name. But for those of us who are not there yet, when the faith is not really deep, and when there is no bonding with the pure devotees and holy name yet, what to do in this journey, where to start and how to get there to what the acharyas and Gauranga Mahaprabhu is giving. That's where this WDC pyramid, the Wholesome Devotee Care Pyramid, fits in, where we could use this as a Krishna tool. We could just lean onto this pyramid and make this as our guide to receive the mercy that is being given. And 2 aspects of this pyramid is, one thing is that it will assure us that all aspects of our health is taken care of, so we don't have to worry that we are not taking care of ourselves. And second thing is, not only all aspects of our personal health, the personal self-care, but the harmony within us and harmony that we need to have with the devotees and the people around too. When we go to the workplace, families, friends, devotees, non-devotees, everywhere, we need that harmony while we are making a journey in spiritual life. So having this devotee care pyramid, when we lean on, we know that these 2 aspects are taken care of. Total self-care and some guidance to give this wholesome care to the other devotees, and also everything material, physical, the material responsibilities and the spiritual pursuit are all taken care of, taken into consideration. So we will not feel like half split, trying to do something spiritually and the other half searching for to see if we are missing any aspects of our health and life. So that way, this can be a Krishna tool for us. And it's more of a Krishna tool because we want to see how everything is relevant to Krishna and service here. With the physical health, Bhumira Poranalo Vayor, that's what these elements are made of. And then we want to use this body, keep it fit and clean, and use the body for Krishna's and devotees' service. And with the emotional health, it can be a Krishna tool because there can be so many emotions that can come up as we make this walk in this, do the spiritual journey. And, Daivihesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya, mam evaye prapatyante maya etam tarantite. So if we have that in mind, all that comes up Maya is under Krishna's control. And if we can utilize and acknowledge those emotions and deal in a way that it is of some service to Krishna and uplifting to us, then that part will be taken care of. Cognitive health is learning the Shastra and sharing the same. And coming to the devotee interactions, the social health also, that cannot be isolated with our self-care. So that aspect, Narottam Das Thakur, when he said, Vaishnava Thakura, Tumara Hrudaya Govinda Vishrama, how to get to that stage, that will be discussed in the devotee interaction, social health in the next course. And finally, the very important one, the all-pervading one, and the top of the pyramid is the spiritual health, from where we derive our strength. That is our goal. And in that, we had Kada on Holy Name last time from Madhavananda Prabhuji. And we will be sending out the information, the summary of it, and recording also the handouts of what Prabhuji said about how to receive Krishna Katha, how to hear it, and how to speak it, and what's the relation between Kirtan and Krishna Katha. Everything relevant practically, so we can apply it and start to honor and relish the Krishna Katha. That was discussed in the last week. And continuation of the spiritual health is the holy name. That will be now presented by Mahatma Prabhuji. And this is the slide where we want to show that if we are taking care of ourselves in all these aspects of health, this is our self-care, individual devotee care. And if we are contributing the same in our own capacity to the devotees around, then we would have a more stronger and bonded ISKCON, where we are healthy in all aspects to see that we are spiritually healthy. We are all doing all this so we can have sound spiritual health. And Madhavananda Prabhuji, with your permission, I just want to show these slides, the quotes from the Acharyas. There are about 4 or 5 slides like that. And after that, if you could kindly continue, we thought it would be a good flow from the Shastra Acharyas into you. Yeah. So in this spiritual health, we have discussed about, we have heard about Krishna Katha, and today would be the Harinam Day from Mahatma Prabhuji. And that was Krishna Katha from last week. And this is about Harinam. What Srila Narottam Das Thakur said about the Harinam, Golokera Prema Dhana. There is Krishna Prema within that holy name. And that's what Gauranga Mahaprabhu brought for us from the spiritual world. And Srila Prabhupada gave this great opportunity for us, connecting us to Parampara, to receive this unique, very valuable, precious gift. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, showing the ways of Sharanagati, so we can receive this Premadhana that is being given by Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And the ways of Sharanagati, again, by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where there is Atma Nivedana. And being a Grihastha, he has shown us that this Atma Nivedana is possible for all of us also, Grihasthas, when we under guidance, when we do this journey under guidance. And finally, our Srila Prabhupada, teaching us how to do the japa, serve the holy name. I'm going to pause here. Mahatma Prabhuji, I'll let you please take over and continue. And if you could let us know what are the common mistakes that we might do when we are doing japa, and how can we chant deeply so we may be able to chant Shuddhanam, pure name, and whatever you might want to speak. Mahatma Prabhuji, over to you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya. Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale. Srimate Bhakti Vedanta. Chami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve. Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sanyavari Paschachita Satarini. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulangayate Girim. Yakripa Tamaham Bande Siguru Tinatarina Panchakalpaturu Vishta Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shadaita Gadadhar Shiva Shri Gaur Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So when I was looking over your initiative of devotee care, I was reminded that I have often spoken about chanting, especially chanting japa, as the highest form of self-care. And Prabhupada has talked about our spiritual life from this position of self-care in a kind of unique way, which some devotees are not aware of. But he used the word self-envy. And of course, self-envy doesn't make sense because you envy people who have what you don't have. So how could you envy yourself? Because you already have what you have. So I would envy you if you have something I don't have, but how could I envy myself? And the word envy is also used, at least in Sanskrit, as I understand, to mean doing something violent to yourself or doing something, not to yourself, but envy can also mean I have, like Prabhupada said, we have envy for animals. And it's like, you think, well, what animal do I envy? No, because we're committing violence to the animal. That's considered envy. It's an interesting definition, isn't it, of envy, synonym with violence. So Prabhupada used it in the context that if I do not take advantage of all the opportunities available to me to advance, or I don't sufficiently take advantage of what I've been given to advance in spiritual life, that I'm actually envious of myself. Interesting. And we've seen this in Bhagavad Gita, right? This word envy of oneself, and in Isopanishad, Atmahana, killer of the soul. Of course, we know the soul doesn't die. That's one of the first things we learned in Bhagavad Gita. And then Atmahana, you're killing yourself. So Prabhupada meant that we're not taking advantage of the teachings and the practices we've been given. Then there's a letter, you may know this letter, and it's actually a letter about self-care. Prabhupada has told us that to help others is the highest state of consciousness, compassion. And Prabhupada said, but there's a higher stage. And interestingly enough, the higher stage is to help yourself. That's the highest stage. Starts with yourself. Of course, we all know, if you're hungry, how do you feed other people? You have to eat. If you're a doctor, how do you help patients if you're sick? So, but there is a tendency, or there can be a tendency, to not take care of ourselves materially, emotionally, spiritually, socially, like you're describing here. And so I like to say devotee care also means self-care. I'm actually giving a course on self-care sometime, I think in the end of October. We're going to do a course on it because it's so important. We always don't realize how we treat ourselves. That sometimes we're not caring for ourselves. If you make a promise to yourself and you don't do it, that's harming. You've actually harmed yourself. Did you know that? Because every time you promise someone something and you don't keep the promise, that person loses trust and it harms the relationship. We do that with ourselves and we don't even know we're doing it. We're actually harming ourselves by promising ourselves to do something and not doing it. And then have you ever heard someone say, I don't trust myself? Well, yeah, why don't you trust yourself? Because you promised not to eat potato chips at midnight for the last 50 years and you do it every night. Obviously, you don't trust yourself. So sometimes we lie to ourselves because we can't face a situation. We know I didn't do the wrong thing. I did the right thing when clearly it was the wrong thing and we can't admit it. So we do have a relationship with ourselves. And as some of you know, I've been helping devotees with japa, probably started about 17 years ago. And in the process of doing that, it started to become clear that one of the reasons some devotees were having a problem with improving their japa is they didn't care enough about themselves to do whatever austerity was necessary to improve their japa. Because when you improve your japa, really what you're doing is you're reforming bad habits, or you're trying to break bad habits by creating good habits. So we're saying, don't chant this way, chant this way. And there are many, many don'ts chant this way, and there are many chants this way. And each one is, for many of us, we may have all the habits of don't chant this way. We may all be doing it, or at least doing some of it. And you all know how difficult it is to change a habit. It can be very painful, cumbersome. It takes time. We tend to revert back into the old habits. And specifically, sometimes, and I'm sure you've experienced this, trying to control your mind is torturous. It's like, I don't want to, I can't, there's too much going on there. Or sometimes when we're not inspired to chant, it's really difficult to chant. We just don't want to do it. And a lot of that is just bad habit, practicing bad habits over time. And so I've seen with a lot of devotees, when I was teaching how to instill new habits and how to overcome the old habits, which I know is difficult, a lot of devotees just weren't invested. They weren't enough invested. And we normally would say, well, they just don't have a desire to be Krishna conscious, or they're not very Krishna conscious. We would say things like that. But often that's not the precise reason. Also, often the precise reason is they just are not in the consciousness of caring about themselves enough. They would allow themselves to not be Krishna conscious and kind of be okay with it. And we do this a lot with our rounds. We've all have chanted bad rounds. And while we were chanting the bad rounds, we knew they were bad rounds and we didn't do anything. Have you ever had that experience? Like, you ever chant really bad rounds and you do nothing to improve them? And you know, why? Like, don't you care? And I would ask the question, don't you care about yourself? I think that's a more important question. Do you care about yourself enough that you would chant good rounds? That's the question I want to start with. Because I can teach you what to do, but if you don't care enough about your own spiritual life, you probably won't do it, or you won't do it long enough to develop a new habit because it's difficult. So I came to this realization from my own experience of teaching, but I also noticed that the most advanced devotees were the ones who took the most care for themselves. They would go to the dhams every year. They always set aside a time to read Prabhupada's books, at least a few hours. They were always up early chanting their rounds. They never missed their rounds. And I started putting two and two together, and I saw, yeah, actually, you will not find someone who's very advanced spiritually who does not take a lot of care of their spiritual lives. And you'll see that in every advanced devotee. You try to talk to them during japa, they won't talk. You try to interrupt them during their reading time, you're knocking on the door, they won't answer it. It's I can't, this is my time to do this. This is extremely important for me. I care about myself enough that I will do this. So I saw that was a problem for some devotees, or perhaps many, that when it came time to improving their japa, that didn't actually really, it wasn't a problem that they were spiritually weak. It was a problem they just didn't care enough about themselves. And they might care about other people's spiritual life. They may give a class and say, do this, and they themselves don't do it. That sometimes happens. They cared about other people more than they cared about themselves. So let's remember Prabhupada's point, the highest service is to save others, and higher than that is to save yourself. So it begins there with self-care. And if ever you have spiritual difficulty, if you're ever spiritually weak, think that maybe it's not just a spiritual weakness, but maybe I just don't care enough about my spiritual life. It's a different dimension, a different kind of spiritual weakness. That maybe I just don't care enough about myself. And ask yourself, if I cared more about myself, what would change? I have a little mantra, which I want to share with you. A couple mantras I can share with you. I think we all have this kind of nightmare scenario, like we know what our weaknesses are, and we have this nightmare scenario that maybe I'd give in to that weakness, whatever it is, lust, anger, greed, envy, anger. Maybe I would do something I would regret my whole life. You ever have that scenario in your mind? You know your weakness and think, Krishna, please don't ever put me in this situation, because if I were in that situation, I don't know if I would make it. Or I know I have this weakness, whatever it is. And I thought about that in relation to self-care. And I came up with a mantra, and I want to share this with you. And you can apply this to japa also. My mantra was, I love myself too much to give in to that. So to pacify that fear of temptation, you know, if you give into that temptation, that specific one, there's the one that could, if there is a temptation that could destroy your spiritual life, then you have to step back and say, I love myself too much. Or if you can't say that, develop self-love enough that you could say that. I love myself too much to do that to myself, to do anything which would destroy my spiritual life or greatly harm my spirit. I love myself too much. Okay. Now let's apply that to japa. Sometimes when I'm chanting japa and it's not going well, I have another mantra, which is, you don't have to accept bad japa. You can actually do something about it, and you could do something about it right now if you care to. Again, back to this, do you care? You can do something now, but do you care? So first point is, we all can do something to improve our japa. We have to understand that. It's none of you are in a situation where you can't improve, although it may seem like that sometimes, but you can. And so my mantra is, if the japa is not going well, you don't have to accept bad japa. You can do something. And so naturally, then the next point is, do I care enough about myself and my spiritual life to do something? And that's a big question that we all have to, we all have to meditate. And there's, we'll, in the workshop on self-care, we'll talk more about it. But I just wanted to share this as a beginning point, that I've seen it a lot. that it's actually not always a spiritual weakness. It's a lack of self-care. I don't care enough about myself. Now it's also a paradox if we look at how much Prabhupada cared about us, how much our spiritual master cares about us. So if someone cares about us that much and we don't care about ourselves as much, something's wrong, don't you think? Like Prabhupada always said, Krishna wants you back more than you want to go. I mean, how did you feel when you heard that? You probably felt horrible. Oh, there's somebody loves me and I don't want to reciprocate, isn't it? It's probably one of the worst feelings if you ever meditate on how much Krishna wants you and how you don't want him as much as he wants you. It'd be a very emotionally disturbing thought. And I suggest that you go there and get emotionally disturbed because it actually can help your spiritual life. So when our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, are giving their life to help us in our spiritual life, sacrificing their lives for us, and we don't care about ourselves, it's a paradox. Now, I know some of us were raised in homes where maybe we felt like our parents, our relatives, they didn't care about us, or we were in some way, came into this world perhaps from a past life and we felt that way. But there's no evidence that Krishna feels that way, and there's no evidence that Prabhupada feels that way about us. And so I would suggest we should be on their frequency, how they feel and what they want. They really care about us. And if they care, shouldn't we reciprocate with their care? So I have often said, chanting japa is the highest form of self-care. And I have I started talking about self-care, I don't know, self-compassion 7-8 years ago. I wrote some articles about it. Self-love, self-care, self-compassion. It's all the same thing. It's just caring for yourself. And some devotees had a problem with that because they said that, well, it's not actually what Prabhupada taught. It sounds like modern psychology or some quasi-spirituality. But I think we're seeing more and more that that's not true. Obviously, I wouldn't have written about it if I had doubts about it. But we're actually seeing that it's essentially important to care about our spiritual lives. And so when we understand this and we commit to removing any obstacles to self-care, your japa will get better just by that, just by doing that. Isn't that amazing? Because when you understand that japa is self-care, and Prabhupada has given me the Mahamantra, Mahaprabhu has given the Mahamantra as the highest form of self-care. He wants me to chant this because he wants me to care for himself. Then what happens? Good chanting is more self-care. Bad chanting is less self-care, right? So the more I care about myself, generally speaking, our japa is going to get better. Isn't that interesting? And so, trying to help people improve their japa within a context where they don't care enough about it is a problem. There's an interesting parallel, so I'll make this easier to relate to. You all have standards in your life, certain standards of, let's say, professionalism in your career. You had standards when you went to school, study habits. You had goals and you needed standards to reach those goals. You have a certain standard of cleanliness in your house. You have certain spiritual standards in your house. And anytime you go below that standard, you feel uneasy, isn't it? Like if your house gets to a certain point of disorder, you start getting upset and you go, I have to clean this. I have to put things away, or there's too many dirty clothes. I got to close the door in the laundry room. I can't see them. It's disturbing me. because my standard is to be more organized. You know, sometimes I get busy and things get disorganized. And so we get disrupted by the disorganization, right? Because it's going below, we have a threshold, right? And so I applied this idea to japa. And this is probably one of the, I think, the most important things that I've ever said about japa. And maybe it takes going to a japa retreat or a workshop or many of them to understand this. But my goal as a teacher when I taught japa was to create a japa threshold. Whereas if you went below that threshold, you would be uneasy, just like the dirty house, and you would clean it up. Just like there's too many dirty dishes in the sink. I can't look at another dirty dish. You go in and clean it. My japa falls beyond a certain level. I go a round or two beyond that level. I go, wait a minute. This is below my threshold. I can no longer chant like that. I am exhibiting self-envy, self-hatred by chanting that way. This is not helping me. Of course, it requires understanding that if we're committing offenses during japa, it slows down our spiritual progress from flying on an airplane to basically walking. So we have to understand that when we're making offenses, especially the offense of distraction, inattention, which is the big one that we're dealing with, or mechanically chanting just to get our rounds done, that we have gone below that threshold. And now it's really on the that threshold is on the verge of self-love, where self-love turns into self-envy. Because now this japa, it's not really helping me. And here's another thought, and I don't think you'll find this anywhere in the Shastra, but I have found things in Shastra which I believe support it, but it's kind of written between the lines. But something I experienced from chanting many bad rounds is that there's a danger, aside from the fact that the pure holy name is not arising in our heart and we're not getting the benefit. It's like I call you're chanting at sunrise and the sun hasn't even risen yet. It's pretty dark out there. So, you know, you're not getting much benefit. And after attending and facilitating many japa retreats, I realized that there's a problem there. And what's the problem? The Shastra says if you commit offense, keep chanting. Okay, you know, what else are you going to do? You can't stop chanting. Because by chanting, you can overcome the offense. But what if you keep chanting with offense? How do you overcome an offense if you keep chanting with offense? So I found something that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said, keep chanting, but chant with remorse for having committed the offense. So there's a healing process there. Because if I'm chanting with offense and I keep chanting with offense, from a psychological perspective, I'm ingraining, or from a samskaric perspective, I'm ingraining that bad habit by continually doing it. That's scary. I was saying this morning or last night, I can't remember, I was giving a class. And I was saying that what I realized as a teacher of japa is that I don't know if you're aware of this. You must be, because we have, of course, we have many habits, and many habits are ingrained emotionally and physically in the body. And so there's this mind-body connection, and the body does a lot of things habitually. Like the joke is, you know, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and then immediately I fall asleep. It's like the body. I've fallen asleep in so many Bhagavatam classes that now when I hear that sound, it actually makes me tired. That can be a physical reality in your body. If you fall asleep in every Bhagavatam class you go to, when you hear that, or the verses start chanting, or the speaker starts speaking, they'll actually put you to sleep because you have the habit in your body, which is kind of scary. So I was asking the devotees, I said, when you next chant japa, I would like you to be conscious of the energy in your body when you touch the beads. Does it go up or does it go down? And if you have difficulty chanting japa, if you don't like to chant japa, if you get bored when you chant japa, if you've never really gone deeply or studied the holy name deeply and really focused on improving your japa, then I would bet, and this is a little subconscious also because you may not be so aware of it, but I would bet when you touch your beads, something shifts in your body towards a negative, something negative, either energy-wise or your mind is thinking, oh no, I really don't want to do this. This is hard. I have to struggle with my mind. Something negative happens. Nischala is saying, yeah, that happens to me all the time. Yeah. As soon as I pick up my beads, I think I want to do something else. Do you ever have that problem, Nischala? Yeah. Like I wasn't thinking about doing anything else till I picked up my beads and go, oh my God, this is like, going to a class you don't like in school or something, or a teacher you don't like. So what I have experienced, realized, and seen, which we should be a little careful about, is that, as Prabhupada said, chanting produces more chanting. So good chanting will produce good chanting, and bad chanting will produce more bad chanting because it's habitual. So it works for you and it works against you. And so this default line of good to bad, it's a little more significant than we think, because when you get over the threshold, you're creating good habits, and those good habits make it easier. And so good rounds become easier and easier. And then you'll notice when you put your hands in your bead bag, there's a rise in energy. You're actually looking forward to doing this. You want to do this. You like to do it. You're benefiting so much. You're getting a taste and so forth. But if you're not trying to improve and you're inattentive, if it's difficult, as a result, you're not getting a taste, you're ingraining habits, not only in your heart, but physically in your body. And sometimes when you start chanting, you'll just start yawning, not out of ecstasy, out of boredom. Does that ever happen to you? You were fine, and then you started chanting, all of a sudden you're yawning, and your hairs are not standing on end. So that means it was not sattvika astika bhava. It was actually tamagun. It's like my chanting japa aroused tamagun. Who would think that chanting the holy name could be a catalyst for tamaguna? That's it's kind of a scary thought, isn't it? But it's a scary reality. So I want to help you. I think my job was to help you chant better, and I wanted to give that foundation because it's the best foundation I can give you. Otherwise, I may not be able to help you. So we want to go with this thought of self-care, and we want to go with this thought of threshold. And what I do in my japa workshops is I ask devotees to grade their japa on a scale of 1 to 10. And 5 is like not good or bad, and below 5 is bad, and above 5 is good. So I have suggested, and I do this myself, to be conscious when you're chanting, check in once in a while and just ask yourself, what number am I on? Like, where am I? Because if you're at a 2 or 3, that's like the disaster zone. It's like, why are you wasting your time right now? Imagine you're doing something, Nischala. You're sewing something, and you're sewing it completely wrong. And your parents come in, it's like, why are you wasting your time sewing that? The cloth's not going to stay together. This is not. So sometimes, we don't want to say we're wasting time because we've made a vow. So it's not a waste of time, of course. And if we chanting, at least we can improve. But we can think that way, aside from what the Shastra says, we can tell ourselves, why are you wasting time at a level 2 or 3? This is not really the way you're supposed to chant. So I tell devotees, I think our initial threshold should be 6. 6 means that your rounds are good, and you feel, if I chant this way the rest of my life, I'll be doing well in my Krishna consciousness. But if you're chanting for the rest of your life, and we ask you this question, how do you think you're going to be doing 10 years from now? Well, I can tell you an unfortunate reality that many of my godbrothers have said their rounds were better in the past than they are now. So time is not a guarantor of improvement, as you know. Just because you've been doing something a long time doesn't mean you're good at it, isn't it? I've been playing Mridanga for 50 years, and any, Guru Kuli who's had, like 6 months of Mridanga lessons or 3 months can run circles around me, because I never took a lesson. So, I didn't improve that much. So time doesn't guarantee that we'll be successful. So we want to shoot at least for 5, I would say. Initially, if you're down at 2 or 3, go for 5. But then when you get to 5, you want at least to get to 6 and then start working up from there. And so it's nice to be conscious of that when you're chanting. We did a japa retreat a couple of years ago with you in North Carolina, also in Richmond. And I may have used this. I don't remember if I asked you to do this, but it's really good, because then you're checking in periodically and you're going, oh, I'm at a 4. I care about myself enough to get over 5. Do you care about yourself enough? You ask yourself that question. Do I care? Do I want to do, I'm at a 4. Do I'm at a 3? I'm at a 2 and a 1. Do I want to do anything about this? Or am I just happy to oh, whatever, I'll take another birth. I joke with devotees who come to my japa workshops, and I say, do you know why you're here at this japa workshop? And, they're thinking different reasons. I go, because in your last life, you were at a japa workshop and you didn't pay attention. That's why you're here. And you had to come back in this life and take it again. So are you going to get it now, or are you going to wait to another life, and have to do it again? So, let me say a few things. I've probably used up most of my time already but I think that's a valuable foundation. But as far as I will say, as Ujjwala Rasagya was asking, to note what we do wrong, I want to say a few things we do wrong, which are also foundational, because we don't have that much time. So let's go for the foundation. Sometimes devotees ask me this question, when somebody's disturbing you and you get angry, how do you deal with it? And when you get angry, how do you deal with it? And my answer is, it's too late. You're already angry. So why do I say that? They're looking for an answer. How do I calm down my anger? And my answer is, you should be introspective enough to understand the causes of your anger, the triggers, and be able to understand yourself in a way that you can see things that will no longer trigger you. So then when you go out, you won't have the problem. You don't have to ask the question, because you're in a different consciousness now. Like I teach a course in forgiveness. So when you take the course, after you take it, then when events happen in the future that would normally trigger you, they don't trigger you anymore, because you don't see things that way. You've healed yourself, not in the moment. You healed yourself out of the moment. It's like sending soldiers to fight in Afghanistan and they haven't been trained yet. Oh, we'll just go fight. You'll figure it out when you get there. Oh, control your anger. You'll do this when you're angry. It's not exactly. So what's the lesson here? The lesson is preparation. That you don't fight a boxing match in the ring, you fight it in the gym. And then you go out in the ring and win it because you've prepared. So what a lot of us do before we chant is nothing. We just start chanting, right? And that's a problem. And the reason that's a problem is because when you're connecting with Krishna, you cannot be in the same consciousness you are when you're just doing whatever you do at your job and your day, driving, shopping, working. It's a different consciousness. It's what I would call a meditator's, you need to be in a meditator's consciousness, for a lack of a better word, japa chanter's consciousness. But you understand what I'm saying? So the consciousness we're in normally day is very passionate. We're getting things done. We're solving problems, isn't it? Like basically all day, we're just kind of, you want to do this or want to do that? Should I do it this way or that way? What time am I going to eat? What am I going to have for lunch? It's like we're decision making, Is it better to go here or there? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Decisions, solving problems, and so forth. And so when you go into japa with that consciousness, you're not actually in the right consciousness. And what's so interesting about this, and it's just interesting this isn't talked about enough, but you know, if you do deity worship, those of you who are Brahmins who do deity worship, you know that there are many purificatory mantras that you chant, and you can do other things with Achman before you go on the altar to prepare yourself, isn't it? Of course, you can't go on if your clothes aren't clean. You can't go on if you're not clean. You know, for chanting the holy name, you know, no hard and fast rules, but there's a preparation because now you're engaging with the deity. So it's pretty serious, right? You don't want to go on the altar just like you just come back from work and 5 minutes later you just jump in with your office in your head. No, you got to calm down, right? Because now you're going to be dealing with Krishna. Why are we not taught to do that before we chant japa? Isn't that interesting? Because, you know, there's a lecture, Prabhupada said, when you chant japa, it's just like the deity curtains have been opened. Krishna's there. You know, we have this problem. We don't think he's there because it's just the sound, and we don't have that realization that Krishna and the sound are the same. Gradually, that realization will come. But until it comes intellectually, we need to understand that when you start chanting, you are now connected with Krishna. It's like deity worship. And some, you know, you can make a throne in your heart and throw the Maha Mantra at Krishna in your heart as flowers or as incense or a lamp. You know, some devotees do this, but it's definitely a relationship. Now you're chanting the name of Krishna. Is Krishna in his name? Have we heard that? Yes. Okay, if Krishna's in his name and you're there, that's called a relationship. You're both there, right? Relationship. So my japa affirmations book was that ceremony, the mantras we chant, the achman we take, and so forth before we worship the deity. That's what that book is for japa. That's the book for japa. It's to put us in a state of consciousness where we will likely get the maximum benefit from chanting. And the interesting thing about that book is if you read that book, it has all the principles that I teach in the japa workshops, but they're formed that you don't read them so much as principles because they're formed in affirmations. But the affirmations are principles. There are principles behind it. So this is important. If you're not in the right consciousness, you're not in the right mood, you can't do anything, isn't it? You know, like let's say Ujjvala Rasagya, you were a heart surgeon and you're scheduled to give surgery tomorrow, and today there was some very disturbing event in your life and you were too disturbed to do the operation. You said, I can't do the operation because I can't be in the right mood. There's a very disturbing thing and I have to take care of it. And one of my relatives is critically ill and that's all I'm thinking about. I can't do it. It's the wrong mood. So mood is so important. If you're not in the right mood, you can't do things properly. So what I found is that if we enter japa and prepare the right mood, a meditator's mood, so to speak, a relational mood, then when we start chanting, the chances of us getting to 5 or above are way higher than if we just pick up our beads and start chanting. Now, Ujjvala Rasagya, one of the problems that I've seen, and it's very deeply rooted, this is also actually an habitual problem, it's a samskara. And the samskara is good, but it becomes counterproductive and applied to japa. And what is the samskara? Many of us have been raised religiously. And so what is connected with religion? Ritual, right? Go in front of the deity, do this, then spin around, and then take the Charnamrita, then you do, you know. And you'll ask somebody, why are you doing it? And you say, I don't know. My mother told me to do it, my grandmother. So sometimes it's like that. We don't even, some things we know, but sometimes we don't even know, or we think we know, or no one told us. They just said, do this. So religion and ritual, they're very closely related. Even in yoga, if you know anything about yoga meditation, there's procedures, right? You should sit a certain way, you breathe a certain way. So we're used to, before becoming devotees, those of you who weren't born as devotees or raised, and if you have any connection with yoga or meditation, you know there's a sitting posture, a certain way to breathe. Maybe you focus on a spot or you close your eyes. So it's very ritual, it's very mechanical. When you do artik, you're counting, okay, 4 to the feet, 2 to the chest, 3 to the head, 7 around, it's like, so we've been trained like that, which is not a problem. It's good applied in certain situations. But then we start applying it to japa, and we start asking questions. Is it okay to stand? Must I sit? Do I have to face east? Should I chant in front of my deities? How long should it chant? How long should it take to finish a round? Can I say Ram or Rama? Prabhu, listen to me chant. Am I saying it properly? And before you even ask me, I will tell you the answer is probably no, you're not. Unless you study Sanskrit, how would you? Do you say Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare? Well, definitely if you're born in the West, you will not say it. And even if you're from South India, you'll probably say Krishna or something. And you're from Bengal, you say Krishna, Ramo. So there's such an amazing story to illustrate how chanting is not ritualistic. It's devotional, and how the ritual can sidetrack us into a mechanical process rather than a relationship. So one man asked Prabhupada, didn't ask him, he heard the devotees chanting, like if you're an American in 1970, you go to India, how do you chant Hare Krishna? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Or if you're from Australia, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. And if you're in French, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And if you're from South America, Hare Krishna, or Italy, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So this man is going completely crazy because he's a Sanskritist. And it's like, there you're not even chanting the Maha Mantra. Who knows what you're chanting? This is, So he went to Prabhupada, and he's, because I guess maybe he wanted to help teach them, how to pronounce Sanskrit, or he wanted to remedy the problem. And he told Prabhupada, he said, your disciples are not pronouncing the Maha Mantra properly. And Prabhupada said, I know. Like, obviously Prabhupada knew. He hears this, right? And isn't it interesting? I've never heard Prabhupada correct anybody's pronunciation, ever. He didn't even really get into it. I mean, we have the tapes, but he didn't ask us to make those recordings. We made them. So Prabhupada said, I know, but Krishna knows whose name, Krishna knows basically Krishna knows that they are calling him. Now let's meditate on this. This is more significant than it appears, right? Because if you're looking at it from a ritualistic perspective, and we know that if you don't chant a mantra properly, it doesn't have power, right? We've read that in Bhagavatam. The cow goes in the fire. You're not a qualified Brahmin, the cow's going to burn. And if you're a qualified Brahmin, the cow gets a new body, right? And, it's kind of strange that they were risking the lives of animals to test their mantras, but I guess that all of them were successful, because otherwise it would have been animal testing, and we're against animal testing, right? So, and these stories, you chant a mantra to get a demon to kill your enemy, but you have one long syllable and it means he's going to kill you. So, we know this. Mantras don't work unless they're chanted properly. And you know, there's so many recordings of South Indian Brahmins, Vishnu Sahasranam and other mantras chanting perfectly. Om Purnam Adaha Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate. You know, it's like, wow, you know, who chants like that, right? Unless you're like raised and, you know, trained from like 8 years old, you know, generally you don't chant that way. I mean, you can learn, but it's more common there. So now Prabhupada's saying, I know they're not chanting properly, but Krishna knows whose name they're calling, right? So what does that mean? It's another way of saying, this is not a ritual. This is not a mechanical process. This is a process of the heart. They're calling to Krishna with their heart. That's real chanting. That's the real holy name. Not the whether I sit this way or face that way, stand up. Can I walk? Is it okay to walk? So, you know, I understand the devotees are sincerely asking these questions, but sometimes it goes too far. Like, how long does it take to chant? Well, you know, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 5 minutes, depends, you know. You know, my joke is, depends how much coffee you drink. Of course, we don't drink coffee, you know, but like, if we did, then that would be my joke. Now, how long does it take to take it around? Well, after no coffee, 8 minutes. After 1 cup, 7. After 2 cups, 6. And after 3 cups, 4.5. That would be the, you know, like running the 4-minute mile. Virtually impossible. So, so they ask questions like that, and I say, you know, 7, 8, 9 minutes around there. 6. And they'll say something. No, but I need to know exactly how long it's supposed to take. And so, and so I was seeing this so much, and I realized that this preciseness of ritual is super important in deity worship, for sure, right? But when you bring it into japa, it can be good to a certain point. Yes, you should sit straight. Yes, you should pronounce properly. Yes, you should hear. But that process of just sitting straight and hearing can actually obliviate Krishna. And it just becomes like a mantra. And it's almost like Krishna is not in the mantra. It could be, right? This is my mantra. I just chant, you know, like some other mantra. No. So Bhaktisiddhanta said chanting is lip deep. It's not heart deep. It's a prayer. It's a connection, right? So this is what we do wrong. If we don't prepare and then we enter the relationship too mechanically, and we don't understand it as a relationship. Like if you do pranayama, if that's your meditation, which is one of the main forms of meditation, right? Or chant Om, and you don't even, like people in the West, they don't even know what Om means, or it's just an impersonal. But especially if you're just doing pranayama, or you're doing a Buddhist meditation, you focus on a candle to calm your mind, there is no relationship with that candle. There's no relationship with your breath. You're not going to go to breath loka and have a relationship with your breath personified, right? You're not going to have a relationship with that candle personified on candle loka. So, you know, that's how meditation has often come to us, as a very impersonal, not even impersonal, it's just inanimate. It's not even Brahman. That's impersonal, but at least it's connected to Krishna. This is material energy. We're just meditating on some object. It's just an object for the practice. There's no relationship there. So sometimes we're more connected with the ritual than Krishna and his name. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest mistakes I've seen. And you know, what you posted there about we should hear, we should pronounce, we should hear, we should chant, and we should cry with our heart. We all know Prabhupada said chanting is like the cry of a child for its mother. What does that mean? It means it's a prayer. So it's not just, you know, oh, like no emotion, just, you know, just hear it, control your mind, and just calm down. No, it's way beyond just calming down. Sometimes it's crying. Sometimes it's feeling shame of having left Krishna. Sometimes it's praying to overcome my biggest obstacles. Sometimes it's praying to Krishna, I'm still unqualified to serve you. Give me some qualification, like that. So that's what I can share today. Trying to share some foundational points rather than too many details. But if you want read my book, it's on japa affirmations. It's on Amazon. Just Mahatma Das on Amazon.com. It's available there. And then we have a handout, which is a brief summary of it, of things you can do to meditate on. And if you would like to come to our japa workshop, it's going to be online, October 9th and 10th. We have a link. And then you can, and we'll also be advertising in different places, but we can give you a link and then you can register. We've made these japa workshops inexpensive and short because we know that sometimes if it's too long or it costs a little bit too much, some devotees feel uncomfortable. They don't want to do it, or they don't have the time or whatever. So anyone can find a couple hours on the Saturday and a couple hours on a Sunday, 1 year out of the year, I'm sure. And I think it's like $11 or something ridiculous. And whenever I tell people it's only 11, they go, why? It's like, we just, we don't want anybody to get mental, we just want you to come. So, and I don't have to fly anywhere and I don't have to rent a room. And, so our costs are only basically the Zoom costs and some maybe advertising costs. So, Hare Krishna. So I'm not sure if I went over time or what we do now, but if you want, I can answer some questions. If not, if you want to end, that's fine also.
Right. Please go ahead. That was a wonderful one. I'll let you go ahead, take the questions, and maybe we can share.
So thank you so much, Mahatma Prabhu. That was so excellent. Like, I really like the point about the self-care. And it was like one of those points that you say, like, how come I didn't think about it before? Like, it's like, isn't this so evident? And then I just like that point. It's so wonderful. So the point of self-care, I think that was certainly a highlight for me. And then also the threshold, setting a threshold for japa. If you're 4 or 6, I think that was also a very nice take-home point for me. And also the thing about how japa is not a ritual. And the preparation before we start for japa. So very, very practical and very powerful point. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. So let's see if you have questions, reflections. You all have an option to unmute.
There are some hands that are raised. Yeah.
So Shamanini Mataji, I see you have raised your hand. So maybe you can start.
You can unmute and you can put your video on if you like.
Yeah, you can unmute and put your video on. That will make it more interactive.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much for this wonderful class. But now I'm really in so much, kind of confusion that, doing the bad rounds is worse than doing. That was, impression. I got it. So can you resolve it? And
okay. At least I got you confused and scared. That's my job as a teacher. Of course, it's never bad to chant Hare Krishna, of course. And we're told when we commit offenses, we should keep chanting continually, and that's how we improve. It was something that was going on for me when I was attending many japa retreats and facilitating them. It was becoming so evident of how deeply we've programmed bad japa habits and how important it was to reprogram good japa habits so that starts to become the new default. And so I was instilling these new japa habits, and it was becoming my default, and it was becoming more natural to chant good rounds. It was like it was almost coming to the point where like I forgot how to chant bad rounds. Nishchala, wouldn't that be good? You actually don't know how to chant bad rounds anymore, because I've reprogrammed myself. It's like if you're learning an instrument, maybe you're not so good at it, but if you practice enough, you get good. And then if someone said, well, can you play bad? You would say, I don't know how to play bad. They're like, how do you play bad when you know how to play good? So it's becoming a little bit like that. Like, how do you chant bad japa? Like, I don't know how to do that. And then sometimes there would be extenuating circumstances where, I'd be on a flight and the only time to chant was on the flight. And everybody, as you know, especially on overseas flights, they're all watching movies. And and if it's to India, it's usually Bollywood where somebody's getting beat up or something like that. It's like it's hard not to see it. And it's really, really difficult to chant. And sometimes I would ask myself, it said, do you want to chant right now in this situation? Because if you chant, you'll be totally distracted. And then you'll be kind of creating this old samskara again, just chant to get them done. Somehow get your rounds done, just get them done. Somehow or other, chant them in the car on the way to work, chant them on the tube, chant them on the subway, chant them on the train, chant them when you're shopping, just get them done. And I was like, I don't want to do that because then those old habits, I may be sparking those old habits. So of course we have to chant 16 rounds. So it was just meant to be a warning, like beware if you do this, you could be again revitalizing your old bad habits. So that was my experience. So I was like, I need to be more cautious. Like they say, if you're an alcoholic, if you take one drop of alcohol, your body is so addictive by nature that one drop, you will then drink, 12 cans of beer from that one drop, right? And I think it's so easy for us to chant bad rounds. It takes absolutely no effort to chant bad rounds. Anybody can do it, and it's easy, right? And we do it. So it takes effort to chant good rounds. And so I was just feeling like I need to be more careful. If I'm not in an optimal situation, maybe I want to wait till I'm in an optimal situation, or maybe I want to do more to see if I can chant good rounds, even though I'm not in the right mood right now, or I'm not in the right existential situation. Because if I don't, it could be that the old habits are kind of being energized now. So that was my realization. Of course, we have to chant 16 rounds. And Prabhupada said, by chanting 16 rounds, you're following your vow. So that's good. But by chanting 16 rounds of offenses, you're not making spiritual advancement, basically. So, he was balancing it out. It's good you chant 16 rounds. I would never say to anybody, don't. And I would congratulate everyone. But the reality is, if they're not good rounds, if they're rounds for committing offenses, they're not really helping. So what's helping is that you made a vow. But, I promised, Shamalini, I promised I would come to your house and help you do A, B, and C. And then I get to your house, I just mess it up. I don't even want to be there. I'm busy, So it's like you're thinking, better he doesn't come. He made it worse. But I want to stay true to my vow. So you're thinking, well, it was good he came, but he was so distracted he couldn't do what I asked him to do. So, why did he come and do it? So the Prabhupada gave a lecture like that. It's like, it's good you chant 16, and it's not good that they're offensive, which of course is true, obviously, right? So that's a thought. I'll leave it to you how you want to deal with it. Definitely don't stop chanting. But
yeah, the example messing up my home really connected me what to do. Yeah. Thank you.
It's another thing that's a little bit difficult. If you do this, it actually becomes difficult to see other devotees when they're not chanting well. Because if you chant well, you benefit so much and you relish it so much. And when you see other devotees just trying to get their rounds done, it's actually becomes painful. Like, how can you chant like that? This is Krishna, this is not really helping you. And you could be so helped by good rounds. Those 2 hours of 16 rounds, that can be a rocket ship to the spiritual world. Or that could be a rocket ship that's anchored to the earth that never gets off, the same 2 hours. And if you chant good rounds, you'll have that experience. And it's when people are not chanting well, it's quite painful to watch it. For me, anyway. And many of the devotees who've taken the japa workshops, they've had that experience, that they're kind of isolating, better ways to chant. And then they're more aware of the bad ways. So they become more aware of when people aren't chanting well. It's a bit of a challenge, actually. Whenever you learn something, how to do it better, you start to notice others doing it the way you used to do it, and it can be upsetting. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Next we have Shweta Manjari.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Mahaprabhu, thank you so much for such a wonderful class. Very, very practical. I had a question. So when we're chanting, sometimes I feel like you're saying that chanting bad rounds is very easy, no effort required. And I feel like when there's so much going on, we forget that Krishna is the ultimate goal, and we show up because we promise Guru. And we know inside that we want Krishna. But since we can't just show up physically and do it mechanically like you're talking about, our heart and our mind has to be in it. And sometimes like that exertion of effort is like it's hard to muster when you don't remember that Krishna is the ultimate goal. And likely if you're overwhelmed by the material world, that's the exact problem. You're not remembering Krishna's ultimate goal. And with something like exercising, for example, even if you don't want to do it, you get up, you mechanically do the motions, and then the effect of like the endorphin rush and then the nice feeling afterwards will still come, even though your mind wasn't in it. But with japa, you can't just do it mechanically. Like it involves a lot of emotional and mental like presence, which just day to day is hard in itself, especially with like all these distractions and low attention spans. But then the problem comes where afterwards you're like, oh shoot, I should have chanted better rounds, and then the cycle repeats. So if you have any advice on that, that'd be much appreciated.
Advice number one, make sure your phone is off when you're chanting, because that's the 10th offense has now been further activated by social media. So the environment in which you chant can help you or hinder you. So don't be in an environment which would nourish any kind of distraction. I think it goes without saying that the earlier we can chant our rounds, the less tendency for distraction will be there, and the morning is in the mode of goodness, and the more that's going on in your life, and the later in the day, the more you're going to feel the way you described, for sure. Bhaktivinoda Thakur recommended also chanting with people who have a taste. It'll wear off on you. And from my own experience, probably the most powerful thing that I have done to fight this problem is just remind myself that this is now my time with Krishna. This is Krishna time. This is important. As Chaitanya Charan said, don't think when you're chanting you're not doing anything. You're not working. You're actually working on your relationship with Krishna. So if you think this is the time I'm working on my relationship with Krishna, then what you described, if it's like that, you would think, I'm not doing a very good job now of working on this relationship. I need to do better, right? And if I'm going to work on this relationship properly, I'm going to need to be able to turn off everything else in my mind and heart now other than this relationship. And so that's extremely important. That's part of the preparation. One of the affirmations is I turn off my world and I enter Krishna's world. And so what you're describing is it's a bit of a preoccupation that we all have with our lives, just keeping our lives together. And so part of the japa preparation is to prepare our mind and heart to go into that relationship, like going on to the altar. So these are some meditations that you can do. And also the other thing to consider is your lifestyle, because our lifestyle is affecting our ability to even do what I just said, because some of you may be saying, that sounds good, but sometimes I can't even do that. You feeling like that, Sweta? Like, yeah, that sounds good, but maybe I can't always do that. Then go back and reflect on your lifestyle. Is my lifestyle becoming somewhat of an impediment to being more sattvic in my japa? And sometimes the answer is yes, right? Have I attended sufficiently to other devotional practices? Have I done other things which maybe were not necessary or maybe counterproductive to my Krishna consciousness, just absorbing my mind too much in things or activities which are not inspiring spiritually? And now I'm trying to chant japa, and so we have this paradox now. I've been, imagine, it's like, not that you would do this, but imagine you have rounds left and you go, well, I'm just going to go to the bar first and the disco and then I'll finish my rounds. Like, yeah, of course, that's not what you would do. But if anyone did that, how would that work? Well, you might think, oh, I have some rounds left. Let me take a shower. Let me go chant my Gayatri. Let me read something and let me chant my rounds. So I think lifestyle it's another really important topic, because lifestyle, sometimes when you're at this point where you're trying to do everything and you just can't, it could be lifestyle. Or it could be too much going on in your life and the day has already begun and you needed to start earlier. The earlier you start, the more distant you are from whatever you have to do. So if you're chanting at 5 and you have to go to school at 9, you're 4 hours distance from the time you have to go out of the house. So it's easy. You say, oh, I'll just chant for a couple hours. I don't even have to start getting ready till 8 o'clock. Your mind calms down, right? But if you have to leave at 9 and your first round's at 7:40, what's on your mind? What am I going to wear? What am I going to have for breakfast? What am I going to do? Isn't it? So those are some things to consider. I just call it decompression. Before you chant, you have to decompress all the modes of nature from the day. That can be your own mantra. Decompress. Distance yourself from all of that. So now, if your spiritual master came to your house, that's what you would do, right? But to speak, if Krishna walked into your house, would you say, well, I got a lot of homework, so could you come back tomorrow? Probably not. I hope not. You would stop everything when he came over. That's what we're supposed to do with japa. Stop everything as far as possible.
Thank you, Prabhu. When you say get into the meditative mindset, do you mean like say affirmations, like form an intention or sankalpa? Is that what you mean? Is that what you mean?
That's one of the things, yeah. When I say it, for me, it means all of that, and it also means Krishna is coming right now. Relationship. I'm conscious that Krishna is coming in his holy name. There's a relationship. Be conscious of that relationship. Right? I'm conscious right now. I'm conscious of so many things. What the weather is, what's going on with coronavirus, etc. I got to drop that and become conscious of this relationship, because that's what I'm doing right now. He's coming. Krishna comes in his name and we're not conscious of it. That's not good. It's kind of like reading a book and you weren't paying attention. I mean, the more you become conscious of Krishna when you chant, the more these amazing things happen, because you start to experience Krishna's actually there in his name, which is an amazing experience. And you experience the side effects, amazing side effects, and taste. One thing I could leave you all with is a little something that I like to do, and I've often recommended devotees do this. Sweta, you can think about what would you like to experience with the holy name, and certainly all the things you described are things you don't want to experience. So you can think, what would I like to experience with the holy name? And then you can pray for that before you begin chanting, and you can visualize that happening. And I want to tell you a story. You'll like this story. One of the japa retreats we were at, a devotee came to me the night before the night before the day we're doing 64 rounds, and he never did 64. And, he finds 16 hard enough, and he was dreading 64. He thought this is going to be like really difficult, if not a torture. I have enough trouble with 16. I'm going to do 64. So I said, visualize that all day you're going to be relishing, and it's going to get easier and easier as the day goes on. Just create that visualization. At the end of the day, he said, I have to tell you something. I said, what? He said, I chanted 84 rounds. He said, I couldn't stop at 64. He said, because I created that anticipation that it's going to go well. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, when, oh, when will that day be mine? What do you want from the holy name? Anticipate that happening. And a lot of us, although we're not aware of this, when we begin chanting, we're anticipating that it's going to be exactly the way it was yesterday. And if yesterday wasn't good, we've already lost. We've already failed because we know it's going to be like yesterday. Isn't it? You ever had that experience? But if we go and saying, when, oh, when will that day be mine? When I experience the holy name in this way and that way. And that's what I want. And I expect it to happen. Krishna, I expect this, that you will help me. It starts to happen. It's amazing. So you kind of see it happening before it happens in the present tense. This is what's going to happen when I chant. And so you're kind of counteracting that tendency for the mind to go, oh, it's going to be bad. Why does the mind say it's going to be bad? Because it's been bad for a long time. It's been difficult for a long time. So it seems like, some devotees believe that japa is just difficult. And it's going to just, that's how it is. And it'll always be that way. Do you know that? That's their japa paradigm. It's difficult. Japa is difficult. It's hard to control the mind. It's right there in the Gita. Difficult to control the mind. Japa, you have to control your mind. It's just difficult. And it'll always be difficult. And if we think that way, the answer is yes, it always will be difficult because that's what you expect. So expect better. See what happens.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. We are at 12:29 now, and we have 2 more hands raised. I'm not sure if you have time. And
I did a class this morning. That is actually what the same thing happened. And every time I answered 2 questions, there were 2 more. But anyway, we actually never ran out of questions because there were always more the more I answered them. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so Nishala, you can go ahead, and then Sindhu, and then we'll end at these 2 questions.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Om Namo Krishna Prabhupada. Thank you for a great lesson. Prabhuji, one question that I have is, one of the reasons why we chant is it's almost like a reality check for us at the time of the death, that at the time of the death you should be able to chant Krishna's names. Sometimes I often wonder, we try to kind of chant in early in the morning, wherever it's possible, at least for me, early in the morning if possible. And then, or in a quiet place where there are no distractions, and we're trying to kind of focus. And immediately when somebody walks into the room, when somebody turns on the light or something, you just get disturbed and you just get distracted. I was reflecting on this, and I'm like, if the time death comes, if you're conscious, then it's going to take a great deal and kind of focus on Krishna. How do you prepare yourself for that? How do you not let other distractions come to you when you're trying to chant?
You were breaking up a little bit, but I think the question is that sometimes distractions come uninvited and they're disturbing. And how do we deal with that when it happens? Was that the question?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Before I answer that question, I wanted to say something that's quite interesting. And I'm not saying this is true for you, but I have found it in myself, and other devotees have said, that when our intention to chant good rounds goes down, somehow or other obstacles go up. And when our intention to chant good rounds goes up, obstacles go down. And one of the things that devotees found, it's just so interesting. There's probably a scientific explanation for this. They said, when my desire to chant is stronger, I always have time to chant. And when my desire is weaker, I never seem to have enough time. Like time is, it's shrinking or expanding according to my desire. Have you ever had that experience? It's like, some devotees tell me, we had this festival or this or that, I couldn't find time. Time was shrinking. And I said, that's interesting, because there was never a time in my life as a devotee when I didn't have time to finish my rounds. And I've been very, very busy, not only attending festivals, but managing them and doing other things, right? So that's one thought to entertain, when that happens, is, well, maybe my desire is not so strong. And maybe Krishna is just like, okay, you don't even care anyway, I'll just get distracted. Personally, what I do in situations like that, I would just get up and go somewhere where I'm not distracted, wherever that may be, in the closet, outside, here or there. Do what you have to do. If you determine that actually it's not because I don't have a strong desire, that, if that's the case, then go somewhere where you can chant. Chanting good rounds is so important that whatever you have to do to chant good rounds, if it's going into another room, it's not a big thing, or just going outside or going on a walk. I find this funny, but the worst rounds for me are at the temple, because I'm most distracted there, because people want to talk, or people are talking to other people. So as ironic as that sounds, I don't like chanting at the temple. I specifically like chanting alone, because nobody can disturb me. But other people would not do well chanting alone. They would just fall asleep, and they would be distracted alone. So it depends on you also, right? So whatever you have to do not to be distracted, then do it. That's the policy that I practice, right? Sometimes someone's chanting in the temple very loudly and I can't hear, so I go outside. I could ask them to chant quietly, or I go outside. No, but you shouldn't. You should chant in the temple with all the devotees. It's not good. I know I should, but I can't hear my rounds. This devotee seems to have an amplifier built into his throat. And it's like, that's all I'm supposed to hear my rounds. I just hear his. So, do what you have to do. I wouldn't tolerate a situation and chant bad rounds. I'd rather just see if I could alter the situation so I can chant good rounds, if it's possible. Not always, but if it's not possible, not easy solutions. Sometimes there are situations it's actually impossible to chant good rounds. Like on the plane to India, when everyone's watching the Bollywood movie. No, I have a solution. I get blinders on. I wear those, then it's fine. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So one last question by Nishala.
Okay. Nishchila, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for the wonderful examples in the class that you gave today. I have this issue with a daily japa cycle almost that goes on. It's not a very good one. It's like the night before I think that, okay, I'm going to wake up early the next day and then just wake up and just do the rounds. And then the next day I find the alarm ringing and I'm like, I'll just do it later. I'm too tired. I won't be able to do the rounds. And then later on, maybe a few hours later, I'm like, okay, now I have to do my japa. And then I'm just like, but there's other important things to do. It's like I have homework, and then maybe an excuse of maybe reading some, even just normal devotional books also. It's like I try to skip my japa almost. And then after that, when I actually have nothing else to do and I've done everything, I just squeeze it into these little spots between other things that I need to do, and forcefully get myself to sit down and chant. And then when I do actually start chanting, it's like my mind wanders off into like a fantasy almost. And then when I control my mind, actually like forcefully get it to stop thinking about it, I start thinking about when my japa is gonna end. So I like never end up having a proper japa. And it just goes on every single day nonstop. So I have no way to solve it at this point.
Yes, you do. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. You are now part of, you sound like you're part of Japa Squeezers Anonymous. We're going to have a 12-step program for Japa Squeezers Anonymous who don't make time for their japa and just squeeze it in. I'm going to do a little something fun with you. So Nischala, let's make believe that what you just told me was told to you by another devotee. And you were the devotee's japa coach, and now you're going to coach them. What would you tell them?
The first thing I would probably say is I can't fix my own problem. How should I fix yours?
Okay. So yeah, that's a good one. But if you had fixed your problem, what do you think you would have done to fix it?
That's the entire question. I don't know how to fix it.
No, you okay, if you did know, what would you say?
I would say what I did to fix my problem.
And so if you did know what it was, what would you do?
I really don't know that. That's the issue.
One thing. Tell me one thing.
Try to chant with devotees, maybe. That's like the best thing I can think of, but it's kind of hard in COVID-19. So then again, I don't know if I could say that.
Okay, so it sounds like you're pretty confused about it. You can't come up with a solution, which is kind of frustrating, right? Because you're doing the same thing every day and you don't want to do it. So it's pretty frustrating. Yeah. The first thing you said was you set your alarm, but you don't get up. Right. Did you know you don't even need to set an alarm because you have a built-in alarm? It's called the Paramatma Alarm. Have you tried that?
No.
Okay. So before you go to bed, pray to the Paramatma and set that time very clearly and communicate that this is the time I want to get up. So pray, this is before you're taking rest, you say, I want to get up at this time, pray, please wake me up, please help me. You actually nobody needs an alarm. The Paramatma, you can set the Paramatma at any time. We could have put alarm clocks out of business back in the day. Of course, now they're all on our phones, but we could have put them out of business with the Paramatma alarm. Yeah, so if you pray sincerely now, what I see as the problem for you is other things have become more important in your life. Is that correct? Right. So what I would suggest is writing down all the reasons chanting good japa is important to you. Make a list, at least 5 things why it's important. Because the why is where you get the inspiration, right? All inspiration comes from knowing why this is important. So I think you've disconnected from the why. You agree?
Yeah.
So if you write 5 things down, you can all do this. This is an interesting exercise. You write 5 things. Why is it important? You know, some things are obvious. Some things will be specific to you. Why it's important for you. Obviously, it's important because it'll overcome that frustration of chanting bad rounds. It'll solve that problem. And that problem is a pretty big problem because it's not really healthy for you. And if you really meditate on it, you might even think, you say, you know, I'm feeling a lot of shame for doing this. And it's probably affecting me in other ways, maybe even physically. So you go down that road, like, why is this important? It can be important in the sense that it's avoiding something negative, not just positive, whatever, right? And if you want to put that exercise on steroids, then under each of the 5 things, write 5 more things why each one of those things are important. So you say, why is it important to get up early and chant good japa? Because it will connect me more with Krishna. Okay, give me 5 reasons why that's important. So you'll end up having 30 reasons. That's what you're missing right now. You're missing the reasons. So it's like, the alarm goes off and it's like, why should I get up? There's no real reason to get up. Bed's warm. I'm tired. You need more reasons to get out of a warm bed when you're tired, isn't it? So that's the problem. We don't have enough reasons. So this is a great exercise. And you can do this with anything you want to do in your life, whatever it is. To stop a bad habit or start a new habit. Why? Write 5 reasons why it's important. And then 5 reasons under those 5 if you need more. Think that will help you, or at least you can try it.
Yeah, I think that would at least bring my japa level from bad to average at least.
Yeah, if you can get to average,
fast.
then that's fantastic.
And then one last question I have is on those days where I don't have like this crazy procrastination and one day I actually managed to get average japa on like 1 out of like 50 days. And then the next day, it's like when I wake up, it's like the prominent feeling in me is like laziness. And then as the day goes on, after everything's done, and then it's like 10 o'clock, and I'm like, okay, now it's peaceful. Now I can do some japa. But then since that's not the proper time to actually chant, of course, if we put to a vow, we have to chant, but it ends up not being that efficient of japa.
Yeah, it's not. And Prabhupada also said that if you get your rounds done before 10, you won't be in anxiety. So you're now putting yourself in a situation where you're in anxiety all day about when you're going to get your rounds done. Or if you just get them done early, you'll be fine. How old are you?
I'm turning 14 in a few months.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So one thing I would say to you, because you're at that age, you are now embedding habits that may stay with you for life. So I hope that scares you or inspires you, one or the other. You have to be careful, these habits, when habits that you develop young stay with you. So if you can develop good japa habits, it's, many senior devotees have been chanting all their life. They just get up and chant their rounds. That's just what they've done all their life. They finish them in the morning. That's their program, it's programmed into their psyche. So if you can program something like that into your life, that will stay with you. Because you have to understand that what you're experiencing now, a busy life, many things to do, try to get this done, it doesn't stop. It just gets worse when you go to university. And it probably gets as bad or worse when you start working, depending on the company you work for. And if you're really good and you move upward as a manager or leader, then it even gets worse. So we have to learn how to manage this. We have to learn how to manage busy lives and be able to cut out that time for japa, especially if you want to get initiated. I mean, anyone who wants to get initiated, they have to do this. They have to learn this art. Otherwise, you can't do it. And human life is meant for going back to Godhead. And so this obviously is the most important thing. And everything else is important, but not as important as this, right? It's like, you may fail an exam at school. That would be bad. But you may fail the final exam of life. That would be worse, right? So if it's a choice between failing math and not going back to Godhead, better fail math. If it's a choice between not going back to Godhead and passing math, better not pass it. Of course, that we're not, it's generally not going to be that way, one or the other. But you know what I'm saying, that sometimes things become more important than japa. And in the overall scheme of things, they're not more important. They never are. They never will be. Because japa is your ticket back to Godhead. Is that okay?
Thank you very much, Prabhu. That probably solves my entire issue.
Hare Krishna. You're welcome.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you for your patience and your elaborate answers, Mahatma Prabhuji. Thank you so much. And the take-home point from your whole session for us is, if I have to put them down, why to chant japa, first thing, and then preparation, anticipation, decompression, and relation. And the final thing is, as you said, beautifully programming. Program this healthy habit starting from why I should do this japa, taking us to the relationship with Krishna and being conscious throughout the japa if the sequence is going right, and place yourself well there in that place and program yourself so it gets repeated every day and the change will happen and we'll start to see. Right. Thank you.
I'll put some icing on that, what you said. Continually study japa, talk about japa, read about japa, have classes about it, because that will keep it in the front of your mind, because it tend to go to the back, right? You got to keep it in the front.
Yeah. Can we call it as, the devotee association? Whoever has the taste for japa, keep in touch with them in your mind, in your prayers. The constant, pure devotee association will give all those things that are outlined, and we look forward to japa.
Yes.
Will not hold you back anymore, Mahatma Prabhu. Thank you so much for your time. And we will be sending the recording of this, the handouts you gave, and all the resources that you gave to all the registrants that registered to this course. Yes, so they can continue. They can utilize the training and resources that you are giving year-wise, so they can improve the japa. Thank you. And for everybody, we will be having the next session about the social relationships, which is Vaishnava interactions, Vaishnava care and etiquette. That would be next week by His Grace Gauranga Prabhu. And we will meet you all next Sunday at 11 o'clock, the same time. And my heartfelt gratitude, our heartfelt gratitude to Mahatma Prabhu for your time and patience and motivation. Pranams to you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you all for coming.
Jai.
Nice to see you all.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Gauranga Nityananda.
Thank you so much.